Okay, so okay, here we go. So let's start if you have any questions.
All
Yes,
right.
Carol, go ahead.
So, I'm kind of a bit worried about the whole $100 million being sent to the Palestinian Authority. I'm just kind of confused about that because I know 3 years ago the Taylor Fourth Act was passed. So, doesn't that kind of make the money transfer illegal since it's technically funding terrorism?
So no, hopefully no. Let's put it this way. Hopefully no. And let me explain what I mean by hopefully no. So for those that just joined, the question is about the Biden administration announced that it was giving $15 million to Palestinian aid, and then it alerted Congress that it was actually going to be giving another $75 million without announcing it publicly, and then went ahead and it seems to be up the number somewhere between 100 and 125 million dollars, depending on who you ask. The Taylor Force Act said that America is not allowed to give money to the Palestinian Authority as long as the Palestinians are still paying money to a martyr fund called the we call pay to slay. I don't know what they call welfare payments, but it's a fund essentially that pays Palestinian terrorists based on the length of their jail sentence. The length of their jail sentence determined by the harshness of their crime. Okay, so that's how it usually works. But the Taylor Force Act only doesn't allow the United States of America to give money to the Palestinian Authority itself. Within this area where I live, there are tons of what are called NGOs. NGOs are non-governmental organizations, which means that they're essentially charities. So, for instance, the $15 million was announced that it was going to something called the Catholic Relief Fund, which is a fund that, like I'll give you an example. My wife works for a number of hospitals run by the Catholic Church here in Yerushalayim, and one of them is a Palestinian hospital. So that hospital used to receive $25 million a year from the United States, and the Trump administration cut it off. Now you'll say, like, why in the world would the Trump administration cut off money to a hospital? Right? So the idea was that if the Palestinians really needed money, then they should really be using their terrorist fund before they start begging for charity from other countries. It's a hard case to make to say, well, we need money because we have no money while you're spending all this money on paying for terrorism, right? So that's a little weak. So the way the Biden administration is quote unquote getting around it, although I don't think they're doing anything tricky, I think they don't have. I don't think the Biden administration really has any interest in giving money to the Palestinian Authority because it's just corrupt. Forget about the fact that they're paying terrorism. Like the money never gets to its intended purpose as soon as it hits the Palestinian Authority. So what they're doing is they're giving it to charities that work in this area. The problem is that even though yes, that doesn't violate Taylor Force, the United States government, I know it sounds strange, and you might say, well, that can't really be true. The United States government actually has a lot of what are called audits and auditing bodies, which means that when it gives out money, it checks to make sure the money was spent the way it was supposed to. And it's against the law to spend the money in a different way, right? So if you get money from the American government and then you go ahead and, I don't know, buy cars with it, so then next time you come to America, they could arrest you because you misused American funds, or America could sue you for the funds, right? Because you misused them. So America actually has a lot of ways to audit to make sure that their foreign aid goes to where it's supposed to. The one thing that America found that it's itself, in other words, it criticized itself. In the reports that came out about American aid, it said that it has trouble figuring out where like the secondary money goes to. So, for instance, we give $15 million, we being the United States, give $15 million to a Catholic charity. Okay. The Catholic charity doesn't spend all that money itself. It has other people that apply to the Catholic charities to spend the money. So let's say you have a smaller charity that you feed people in a certain neighborhood in Bethlehem. So you apply to the Catholic charity and say, we would like $50,000 to go to our organization so that we could give money to this like neighborhood in Bethlehem that our church takes care of. So that Catholic church will give the Catholic church, excuse me, that America gave the money to, will then give that money to that different organization. that small organization. Those small organizations, America is not checking. So what America is criticized itself is saying that we don't have a sufficient manner of making sure that the secondary recipients aren't actually being controlled by the Palestinian Authority. So if the Palestinian Authority could set up all these fake charities and then apply to the big charities getting the money, right? And obviously, like, how do they know they're going to get the grant? Because they tell these big charities, if you want to operate here, you've got to make sure we get grant money also. So they're saying that America has no way of ensuring that that's not happening. So that's where the criticism really has been leveled at the Biden administration, saying, how could you do this when you don't have the checks and balances to make sure that it's really going well? So that's the you understand. So that's my concern. I have absolutely I happen to agree with the Trump approach that we shouldn't be giving money to the Palestinians as long as they're spending money on pay to slay, even to poor Palestinians, because we should be pressuring the Palestinian Authority to spend their own money on charity in order to get them to stop spending money on terrorism, right? So I have nothing against money going to Palestinians that are poor and need money. I just think that the first funds that should go to them are the ones being given to terrorists. Stop the money from going to terrorists. Then, if they need more money, then I think I'm more than happy as an American taxpayer that my money will go to Palestinians to help feed them or whatever it is, but not that my money is now freeing up money to go to terrorism. Understand? That's the issue. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, why is the Biden administration doing this? Right? So why are they giving money to the Palestinians? So the Palestinians won't have anything to do with the Americans ever since Trump cut off aid, and therefore America can't have a positive role in the region. They want to try to create, at least set up a way of getting somewhere near the two-state solution. That's what they want. They want to end the Palestinian conflict. They don't think they could do it now themselves, but they're hoping to get closer and closer. And the only way they can do that is if they have some sort of influence with the Palestinian Authority. Right now, the Palestinian Authority won't talk to the United States. So they're hoping that by reinstating aid, then all of a sudden the Palestinian Authority will say, okay, now we'll talk. So what they're doing essentially, and I think this is a huge mistake because this has never worked, is they're trying to appease the Palestinian Authority so that the Palestinian Authority will be friends with them again. That's a very risky move. I don't see it ever working. It doesn't usually work in the Arab world, but that's what they're hoping. That's the game plan that they're trying to follow. What's interesting is that it came out in the news today is that in February, Secretary of State Tony Blinken tried setting up a call with Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinians. And Mahmoud Abbas said, no, I'm the president. I don't speak to a Secretary of State. I speak to the president. So when Joe Biden wants to call me, so then I'm willing to take a call from the United States. But until then, I don't speak to a Secretary of State. So that's an amazing amount of audacity and chutzpah on Mahmoud Abbas's. Shockingly, President Biden has not picked up the phone and called him. If he did, that would be a tremendous dishonor to the United States of America. But it's been 6-7 weeks since that's happened, so it doesn't seem like like they always say that Abba Eban was the foreign minister of Israel for many years, and he has a famous line that people like quoting, which I think is so to the point, which is the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Like they constantly make strategic mistakes like this, where they're just always ticking off people. So that's that's it. Okay.
Well, kind of following up, sorry. Isn't giving money to them just gonna make them a lot more greedy, so to say? Like we're gonna keep giving them, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, we're not gonna talk until we talk to the president," and Israel's
Right,
not
or
giving
until
them
you
money.
actually give money to the Palestinian Authority. There's another reason why the Palestinian Authority, now, it's funny because President Trump cut off a lot of funds, but then the Palestinian Authority themselves refused any funds because Congress passed 4 laws towards the end of the Obama administration, beginning of the Trump administration. Okay, keep in mind that Congress controls the money that America spends, not the president. Okay, 3 branches of government, all equal. So Congress has control over the funds. So Congress passed laws that the president signed into law. One of the laws is that if you receive funds from the United States of America, from the government, then Americans can sue you in American courts. That's something the Palestinian Authority does not want to happen for one very simple reason. The Palestinian Authority is responsible for the deaths of many Americans in terrorist attacks. Okay, Ari Fuld, for instance, right? So the Fuld family right now cannot sue the Palestinian Authority in an American court. The American court doesn't hold it has jurisdiction over the Palestinian Authority. So America made a law that anybody that takes American money now is subject to American courts. So the Palestinian Authority realized that if America's going to give them $400 million and the Fuld family and a bunch of other families are going to sue each family for $500 million and win those cases, and then just go to the American government and say, hey, you're about to send $100 million to the Palestinian Authority, that's actually ours. We have a court claim against them. So then they're never going to see the money anyway. And they're going to owe. So, right, and above and beyond that. So the Palestinian Authority won't take aid for that reason, because then they're subject to American lawsuits, in which case they know. Imagine filing a suit in a Texas court, in a courtroom, against the Palestinian Authority for the death of an American, right? I mean, it'd be very hard to find a judge in certain parts of the United States of America that's not going to rule against the Palestinians. So that's and court cases that have happened, the Palestinians have lost. Just we haven't been able to collect on those cases. Okay. Let's see what else we got. We have a couple minutes until Ellie Cadrone comes on. So yes, Jordan, go ahead.
So I haven't been able to follow up on this, but I saw that there's an Arab party in the Knesset, the Ra'am, that was looking into making some coalition deals. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So I mean, it's over now. It didn't happen. I mean, but who knows? Anything could happen in the next 30 to 60 days. Today was the day that the parties came in and suggested who they want for prime minister. The Arab parties have traditionally never taken part in the ruling coalition in Israel. In other words, they've always stood in opposition and never been part of the government. Okay, that's how it's always worked. So they're in the Knesset, but on principle they said we're not Zionists, so we can't be part of this Knesset. The Ram party is the first party to sit there and say we're still not in favor of Zionism, right? We're still not in favor of this whole deal here, but we realize that if we want to improve our people's lives, we've got to start playing, on the team that has the power. So maybe we'll go into a coalition. So they still might, but today was the day when all the parties came to the president of Israel and said who they wanted to be prime minister. There was a big, there was a good feeling that they were about, and they were sending out hints that they were going to suggest either Yair Lapid or Bibi Netanyahu, and it looked like Bibi Netanyahu. In the end, they did what every Arab party always does and suggests nobody. So it doesn't look like now. I gave you my personal opinion. I usually don't. I'll give you my personal opinion. A lot of people are excited about, for the first time, you have Arab parties that are participating, and that sounds great. It sounds great until you start looking at what this party stands for, and you start realizing okay, this is not who we actually want in the government. It'd be very hard for anybody to take them in the government. A lot of Netanyahu's other partners, if he's going to be able to form a coalition, said that if you use the Arab party in the coalition, we're going to drop out of the coalition. So any gains that Netanyahu might have by taking them in would be offset by losses that he would have by having the Arab party. It's not like an Arab party that came along and said, it's not the UAE. Let's put it that way. Okay, it's not the UAE. It's a step in the better direction, but we're not fully there yet here. Yeah, this is not exactly fully helpful. Okay, anything else? Yeah, Rafi.
Yeah, this week there's apparently talks in Vienna with the signatories to the original JCPOA deal, and the U.S. having left that under the Trump administration. What's Rob Malley? What's the U.S. doing there this week?
So the Iran talks, which are very, very secret, have started. They're very secret because anybody that wants this coalition deal to get into place and to work, it's not going to work if it's not going to work if the details get out and Israel doesn't like it. Then Israel will start a whole mess, and the Republicans will start a whole mess. So the talks are very, very secret. Hey, Ellie, just answering your question. Give me 1 second. The talks are very, very secret, so nobody really knows what's going on. There are disturbing reports of America wanting to just give about everything that it possibly can into, to get back into the deal. But I don't know. We'll have to see. God bless you. So we're not going to get too many details out of this. Hopefully Israel's bugging everything and they know everything, but I don't know. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to actually do is, hold on, I'm going to stop the recording and then start the recording again, so we could have two different recordings for the second part.